economics, we in the United States love competition. The consumer wins, the society wins with better products, cheaper prices, and advancement in technologies. And that's all a good thing. However, businesses should compete fairly, and that's very, very important. So over the years, we've come up with some laws that we codified as the unfair trade practices or antitrust. They're some of the oldest laws in the books. They date back to the 1800s to promote open, free competition, let the best product win, but penalize companies both criminally and civilly for antitrust, uncompetitive behavior. So that's what Chapter 5 in a nutshell really kind of exposes you to. Now, this is a particular specialty area of law. Attorneys study for many years and they make a considerable amount of money practicing just in this very complicated area of law. If I had to pick an area of law that's the most complicated, it would definitely be this one. Let's first start with the reasons why we have antitrust law. Again, to promote competitiveness, to penalize companies that try to corner the market, abuse their market share, to promote the American dream. If you come up with a good idea, it's always important that you have the ability to bring it to the marketplace. Some would say antitrust law is high-tech Robin Hood. You're robbing from the rich to give to the poor. So the detractors of antitrust law, such as Bill Gates, I'm sure, would say that, hey, you're trying to equalize and make everything equal. Penalize the established good companies, the rich companies, at the expense of the poorer companies. Make everyone equal. And in fact, Bill Gates and his attorneys, I'm sure, would argue that this is high-tech socialism. Antitrust law is socialism or communism because you're trying to make all companies equal. So do be aware of that counter-argument. But we can kind of understand antitrust law by comparing two different industries. The cell phone industry, which is very, 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 very active, competitive. We all get cheap prices, cell phones, great plans. Every 30 days, new technologies rushed out to the marketplace, whether they're the hardware or the communication abilities. We all benefit from that. That's a very healthy, competitive marketplace. Antitrust law tries to make that the typical type of marketplace. Everybody wins. Cheap prices, good service, relatively speaking, etc. Whereas if you compare the marketplace of computer platforms, you only have two companies. You have Microsoft and Apple, Mac. That's it, generally. I mean, you have a few minor platforms that are found in computers, such as OS2 Warp. I'm not sure if they're still around. Linux. But generally speaking, when you buy a laptop, you got one or the other, Apple or Mac. And that's not very competitive. And in fact, the prices are very high for those products. Innovation doesn't move as quick as the cell phone industry. So you can compare two different industries, the cell phone industry and the computer operating system industry. One is a very healthy industry, one is a very sick industry, in my opinion. Antitrust law tries to get us to that more healthy, competitive type industries. So antitrust law there's actually three major federal laws, and states have their own antitrust laws. They've modeled them after these federal laws. The Clayton Act, the FTC Act, which created the Federal Trade Commission, which is a very powerful agency, and we call that enabling legislation, creating agencies, giving them powers, which we'll talk about next chapter, in Chapter 6 in your book. And finally, the Sherman Antitrust Act. Those are the primary three sets of laws. And they provide for criminal and civil liability. That means the government can go after companies that violate these laws with criminal sanctions, fines, penalties, even breaking up companies, taking companies and separating them up, as well as civilly. Consumers and competitors who are hurt by anti-competitive behavior can sue these companies for treble damages. Treble damages is 3 times the damages that have been caused to the consumer or competition. So these laws are enforced both by the government and civil lawsuits. Now, there are three areas of antitrust law to try to make this and simplify this as much as possible, if you will. There's illegal monopolies, illegal mergers, and unfair restraints of trade. Illegal monopolies, keep in mind, not all monopolies are illegal. It's when a monopoly crosses the fine line and starts to abuse their market power. Then they become illegal, and your book talks about a few examples of that. Microsoft being the preeminent example in our minds. They were charged with having an illegal monopoly and tying arrangements, and they were found in violation as an illegal monopoly in order to stop doing the bad acts that they were doing, donate money and computer systems to schools, and pay the government's cost in prosecuting that case. So Microsoft is an example of an illegal monopoly. The second category is illegal mergers. You have to get permission from the government to merge your companies if they involve a certain percentage of the market share on up. And there are many cases over the history that mergers have worked and some mergers have not, such as the AOL Time Warner merger was somewhat of a disaster, both managerial and the effects of it. One merger that the companies Office Depot and Staples, they tried to merge. In fact, they did merge without the government's permission. And that's an example of an illegal merger, and they were actually ordered to demerge. So antitrust law is three categories: illegal mergers, illegal monopolies, and finally the catch-all category called unfair restraints of trade. Unfair restraints of trade is this miscellaneous bad acts category. There's a lot of different bad acts that companies should not do. They should not burn down competitors' factories, tap into phone lines of their competitors. They should not pirate away trade secrets or key personnel that are under exclusive agreements with their employers. They should not price discriminate, or they should not divide up markets, things along those lines. And those are judged on a case-by-case basis under the rule of reason legal standard. Let's just talk about one of them. There's hundreds of these bad acts out there, but one is price fixing. Price fixing is when companies and competitors call each other up and actually say, hey, you price your product at this, and my price will be at this same price. And that's generally illegal. That's called price fixing. Price gouging is also illegal. That's when you charge far, far too much and take advantage of the situation over the consumer. But getting back to price fixing, that's one of those unfair restraints of trade. And it's evaluated under the rule of reason test, like so many of the others in this third category. Now, don't be confused. There is a thing called parallel pricing, also known as conscious parallelism. That's perfectly legal. Parallel pricing or conscious parallelism is the free market forces at work by themselves. That's when competitors kind of mimic each other. They follow the leader. Like the burger wars, when McDonald's raises its prices, drops its prices of the Big Mac to 99 cents. Then Burger King follows with its Whopper at 99 cents. And Wendy's Hot and Juicy is 99 cents. So they kind of follow each other's leads. You see that in the airline industry. Gas stations on certain corners follow and mimic each other's prices. So long as there's no agreement to do so, then that's perfectly legal. No problem. Once there's an agreement to start price fixing, there's actually a conscious agreement to do that, then that can be illegal under the rule of reason test. So this is a very complicated area of the law. I just wanted to give you an overview of what to expect when you read this particular chapter, chapter 5 of your book. But it's a very important chapter. We like competition. There's no problem trying to beat out your competitor in the marketplace, but you must do so fairly.